Welcome to the Dream Power Show, where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Welcome to the Dream Power Show. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, the Dream Coach. When I first began my study of dream work, I was totally unaware of the new world I was about to enter. And boy, what a world it is. On my journey, I discovered many books and videos that better inform my knowledge of dreams, as well as the organizations devoted to the advancement of that knowledge, the International Association for the Study of Dreams. Each year, they hold a conference that features speakers on all aspects of dream work. And this year, the conference is virtual, being held from June 13th to June 17th. I'm happy to have the chair of that conference, Robert Haas, on as my guest. Bob is also a director and past president of the International Association for the Study of Dreams and is a noted instructor and author and editor of over a dozen books, including Dream Language and Dreams, Understanding Biology, Psychology, and Culture. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Bob.
Well, thank you, Debbie. Appreciate being here.
Oh, it is my pleasure. And Bob, I have to tell you, when you were on Dream Power Radio last year, you told us about the dream you had that convinced you that you had to cancel last year's conference because of the pandemic. Did you ever dream this year that led you to hold the conference virtually?
Well, unfortunately, yes. My dreams would not let me alone. But yes, I indeed had a couple dreams about this particular one. One of them that was particularly interesting was that I had, and I felt totally defeated by the situation, and I was about ready to totally give up. And I had a dream where what I saw was a boxer, big, he had big muscles and whatnot. And, but he was bent over and totally defeated and disheartened, and he was done for, so at first impression in the dream was, this guy has ended this particular match and may be done for. But then a voice in the dream came up and basically says, no, he's just exhausted. He has all the strength. Look at his muscles. He has all the strength to recover and go on. And so what the dream was kind of doing, it was not only showing me my attitude, but trying to show me a different way of looking at it, and basically providing me a safe place to sense that new vision. And what happened then at the end of the dream was the boxer rose up and flexed his muscles and was ready for the next round. And as a result of that, I realized that I was ready for the next round, which was the conference.
Well, I tell you, the reason I brought this up was because I think that having dreams like this, it's a perfect example of how we can use our dreams in our daily lives to solve problems and to get answers to questions that we may not have the answers to in our waking life. It's so practical for problem solving. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's part of the function of the dream in the dreaming brain. When we go to sleep at night, our brain does not shut off. A great deal of it remains active, or it actually activates. And there's certain areas that account for why dreams are so helpful to us. One of the primary areas is the limbic system, which deals with processing emotion and emotional memories and things of that sort. And what occurs is that when you have an event in your life that's disastrous, like the conference having to be canceled or something of that sort, there's two things that happen. The first thing is the event itself. The second is how you perceived it emotionally and how you reacted to it. And it's that part of the event that our dreams work on, because it's that part of the brain that activates most highly, particularly in REM sleep, when your eyes are moving and your dreams are more vivid. But then also there's a part of the inner frontal cortex of the brain uh, that surround the limbic system that's responsible for problem resolution and learning. And this tends to introduce a different way of looking at the situation, such as with the boxer example I just gave. This voice comes in, this inner part of the brain comes in and says, oh no, let's look at this a little differently. You know, he's still got big muscles. And then finally, the whole dream is painted on a screen of the associative cortex, which is, it talks or speaks in a language of association. And so it doesn't necessarily, for instance, my dream did not show a canceled conference or anything of that sort. What my dream showed was a picture of my feelings. It showed a picture of, you know, this defeated boxer. Okay, so it's the associated, it shows associations with our feelings, and that's what our dreams are. All three areas work together to try to resolve the problem.
Absolutely. Would you say when you're trying to understand what your dream is telling you, do you think that the emotional aspect is the most important part to focus on?
Yeah, because that's what the dream basically focuses on. It rarely brings in the actual event itself, except sometimes you'll get the repetitive PTSD dreams that will do that. But even then, those dreams are attempting to try to resolve the emotional aspect of the situation. They'll actually break it up, the event. They'll break it into pieces and parts that it can handle. And then the dream will be about one particular aspect of the trauma. And then another dream at some other time will be about another aspect of the trauma.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Getting back to the IASD, it's been holding its conference annually, and it's always been a great way for dream workers to get together and compare notes and meet each other again. But it's also been a place where information about dream work is shared. Well, humans have been working with their dreams for thousands of years. So what could possibly be new in dream work?
Well, dream work has evolved and is always continuing to evolve. There's various new techniques that have evolved from the time of Freud that have fed the dream work we do today. Some of it, I was trained in Gestalt therapy, or Fritz Perls, where you actually role play or become some character in the dream, and it helps you to reveal those emotions that are in that particular dream area or in that dream image. Jung, for example, although these people lived years ago and developed their techniques, they've all sort of formed or massaged the way that we do dream work today. Jung was particularly looked at the collective unconscious, how the inner self comes out in the dreams in terms of archetypes and images that are somewhat common between dreams, but they represent inner emotional forces and inner psychological forces. And what happens in today's dream work, modern dream work, is the psychologists who've studied across these different fields become very eclectic about it. They paste together these different approaches into new dream ways of working with dream work. And one of the nice things about our conference is that we have a lot of those different psychologists who do different types of dream work, but it's really kind of a pasting together of some of the earlier techniques in brand new ways that help us to reveal what our dream is talking about and what the images are revealing to us.
Can you tell us about some of the people who are going to be making presentations this year?
Yeah, we've got some of the keynotes are pretty interesting. We've got a couple of different tracks this year that we're featuring. One of them is Dreaming in the Arts track, which has gotten very large at the conference. And another one is Dreams and Ethnicity, how ethnic groups can deal with their dreams or do deal with their dreams and what their dreams are about. For instance, we have Jungian analyst Dr. Fanny Brewster, who's talking about dreams letting my heart be broken. It's sort of a Jungian way of looking at it. Dr. Eduardo Duran, who was a psychologist in who's been a psychologist in Indian country, for example, for over 30 years. And he's giving a talk on bringing form from the black world to the plant world. Tori Nielsen is our research keynote. He's a professor at the University of Montreal. He's talking about sleep onset dreaming, some of those interesting dreams you have as you fall asleep. At Keith Shaman, he's giving one of the most beautiful audio and visual presentations. He gave one a couple of years ago at our conference here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we loved it. So we asked him to come back, and he's presenting something called To Walk in Beauty. And it's sort of a melding of how nature and dreams work together. Just fascinating. And then we've got an invited speaker, Dr. Michael Nadorf, who's talking about bad dreams and nightmares. And we actually have about 140 presentations. So if I was to name them all, we would use up the hour or the half hour.
Probably. But the other interesting thing is it's not just the actual dreams itself that people talk about. You also have people talking about sleep and sleep studies related to dream also as well. Yes.
A lot of the dream researchers have come from the world of sleep studies. And some of them just basically will talk about sleep studies, although the focus of the conference is mainly on how dreaming comes from that nighttime activity of sleep.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds exciting. I mean, I can't wait for this to start. Getting into some of the more specific aspects of dream work. One of the things I'm asked about a lot, and it seems like I've been asking about this more in recent years than ever before, is lucid dreaming. I know for some people it comes naturally. I know when I first started out, doing dream life coaching, I met this woman who had lucid dreams. She thought everybody did. She thought it was just the natural way of being. And I was like amazed, like, wow, you can actually do this. But it can be learned. Why would anybody want to learn how to be a lucid dreamer?
Well, the nice thing about lucid dreaming is it is so helpful. It's not only a lot of fun, okay, most people usually find out or maybe never get beyond flying and doing whatever you want in this magical world once you realize you're dreaming. But it is very, very healthy, because what's happening now is in a regular dream, you're strolling around as a sort of non-willing ego, experiencing whatever the dream brings to you, trying to resolve problems. But when you're in lucid dreaming, all of a sudden you are an awake, conscious ego that now can contribute to the healing process and the learning process. So you can now dialogue with the unconscious. I call that the wisdom behind the dream. Jung called it the collective unconscious. Some people call it divine wisdom. But if you find out, when I get lucid, the first thing I do is turn around to this wisdom that's deeper within the dream and ask a question, an open-ended question, like, what should I do to get out of this situation, or something of that sort. And the dream will then morph into a new lucid dream, which will basically either metaphorically or sometimes directly answer that question.
So if somebody wants to learn how to be a lucid dreamer, how do they start?
Well, there's a whole bunch of different ways of dealing or becoming or learning how to becoming lucid or learning how to lucid dream. One is the way you mentioned, just it naturally comes to you. It did when I was a child, which was the reason why I got so interested in dream work. All my dreams were kind of lucid and I could do things in them. But there's a number of techniques. And one that I find is very useful for me, it's called Wake Back to Bed, where you wake up earlier than you normally would. It's usually when I do it naturally. Get up for about half hour to an hour and read a book or do something just relaxing, and then go back to bed. And sometimes when you go back to bed, you have changed your circadian rhythms versus your REM cycle to the degree that suddenly your dream goes lucid. I find that works for me easier than other ones. One of the probably the ways that is most common is reality testing of some sort. Carlos Castaneda did it with hands. But during the daytime, just when you can remember, go, is this a dream? Is this a dream? Or do something like try to poke your finger through your hand. Is this a dream? And of course, when you're awake, you realize that it isn't. But what you're doing is you're training yourself for the nighttime, for your actual dreaming experience. So that's a very successful one. Entering from being awake is another approach, but that I find is very, very hard to just try to fall asleep while you're still awake and get into a dream that way. But actually, one night I was able to achieve this, and this has to do with our conferences too. I was able to actually achieve it. In fact, one night I woke and could lull myself back into sleep into a lucid dream 4 times. The 4th dream was pretty interesting. I was floating above an outdoor stadium, which was featuring our IASD conference. And it was, a conference I was managing. The stadium was almost filled, which was a very happy thought. And on stage were some presenters who were working with the dream as if it were a play. It was very colorful and dynamic and beautiful. And as it ended, I began to float off into the sky slowly, feeling really fulfilled, and said to myself out loud, what creativity. What a wonderful organization to be a part of. And then I woke up. So that sort of inspired me to keep on going with the conference.
How can people find out more about the conference and about you?
Okay, there's 2 things about me first, because the conference can also be entered through my portal. I'm at dreamscience.org. It's pretty interesting, or pretty easy to remember, Dream Science, but it's .org. And in there'll be an advertisement for the conference. But to go directly to the conference, it's iasdconferences.org/2021. So IASD, our organization, conferences, one word, IASDconferences.org/2021. And you can find out all about it. And it's because it's virtual, it's a lot cheaper. It's half price of a normal conference. Plus, you don't have to have a hotel and the expenses of travel and things of that sort. So I hope people will come and enjoy it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And it's a regular 5-track conference, just like our normal conferences are if they were on site. It's not just a single track. We have 5 different tracks going, in addition to the 4 keynotes that I mentioned.
We've been talking about dream work with Dream Master Robert Haas. We'll be right back with my next guest. My journey to where I am today has been a long one, and one that's taken me places I once didn't know existed. Here's an example of what I mean. About a dozen years ago, when I got involved in a documentary called Dreaming Heaven, I came in contact with someone who called himself a shaman. At the time, I believed a shaman was some kind of tribal person who performed strange ritualistic practices. But this man was an American who struck me as a kind soul with practical ideas. And I'm proud to say I now consider him a friend. Francis Rico has spent years teaching indigenous wisdom to students everywhere. He's the author of the book, A Shaman's Guide to Deep Beauty, and has a new book coming out, Becoming Feral. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Rico.
Thank you. I can't help but notice that we have the same hair, no matter what the color is. Look at what we've got going. It's like,
I know. Well,
we've always been related by hair somehow.
You are my hair brother.
Yes, I guess.
Yes, which is great. for those in the audience who may also have misconceptions about the word shaman, like I did, tell us what it means to be a shaman.
Well, people that identify themselves as shaman, I mean, language is language, and we talk, but people that identify themselves as shaman are under a misunderstanding. The word itself is from a verb-based language, from the Tungus tribe and Venki language group in Siberia. And really, what it means is it means vibrating um, in a certain way. It means vibrating, leaping, jumping up and leaping out of the contraction or the constriction of normal reality, but not just high, deep simultaneously and broad simultaneously. So it means leaping out. But also, it's one of those words that has many layers of meaning. One of them is seen in the dark, but the darkness that it's talking about seeing is in the normal, quote unquote, normal reality, that the consensual reality that we allow or that we accept. So shaman's actually a verb, and someone calling themselves that, unless they kind of let you know what they're talking about, that they're talking about, yeah, it's a vibrational art, and everybody is creating their reality. Everybody is doing this. It's just, can you do this art with style? Can you do it with creating mutual benefit for yourself and others? So my grandfather was a Makato shaman, so we call it a shaman. But what that just defined was that Makato means in between worlds, and he was able to go from what we call ordinary reality. This is back in the late 40s, right? From ordinary reality to non-ordinary reality. And in fact, what we know now and what we're all experiencing is that there is no ordinary and there is no non-ordinary reality. It is very much what you said in your introduction. There's an element of the dream to everything, not only the dream at night when we're asleep, but also the dream of our daytime assembly of reality. We tend to accept it as normal because we think it's normal, but in fact it is just it's as imaginative as any dream we've ever dreamt at night also. So there are interesting realms, like there's a realm of lucid dreaming that is part of shamanic traditions. If I can just say shaman, and everyone, you understand that it means a vibrational art. It means the art of moving from contraction to expansion. And I believe that everyone can do this. This is, of course, a position that was held in a tribe out of necessity in tribal groups, that someone who had this skill would go outside of normal reality and would look for solutions, like what are the herbs and the plants and the medicines that this person needs? What are the resources? What's the form of agility from the world of nature? Like, do you need an otter? I mean, to go diving into the water, and what do you need? Do you need foxes? Do you need lions? Do you need an elephant? What kind of strength do you need? What do you need? A bear? That fierce, ferocious, protective love. What does the person need? So a shaman's role was to do that for the benefit of tribe. Now I think, faced with the great emergencies that confront us, the price of awakening now is very different than it used to be. The price of our awakening is awakening to the reality that we're faced with mutual overlapping emergencies.
Yeah.
And
I think it's very interesting you say that anyone can really do this. It's not just a special thing that's just, given to one person.
no, not at all. As a matter of fact, we can demonstrate it. I mean, I can share a practice with you that is the practice of shamanism, the way it's taught by the old Kalawayas, who are the holders of shamanic wisdom in the Americas, and they live in the ice fields of the Royal Andes, and in Bolivia, and they eat sunlight and a skimpy little diet, and yet they're robust and healthy and strong. They live in a place that is so, nobody goes there. I went there 11 years in a row before they would acknowledge my presence, that I was actually visiting, before they would, I guess I was like a fruit fly or something that was like, flying around their periphery. Finally, and very simple and very practical, energetic workers. But I can share that with you right now, because it's also,
Absolutely. Go ahead.
it's so this is also, as it happens, a concordance of a meeting of contemporary leading edge neurophysiology and accessing our neuroplasticity simultaneously with the way that the old elders teach and the way that they taught and the way that I learned. Of course, they use a hand, and this hand message through time has been held by all the avatars of our species. All the holy people have sent this message in sign language. And of course, we interpret it in different ways, but they keep sending this message. So let's find out what that message is about. Now, in neurological terms, so people know that there is an empirical, strong, real foundation in terms of our physiology and how we're constructed, what our potential is. A neurologist will use your hand and your wrist. The wrist is a model of your spinal cord. The base of your palm is your metabolic brain. We have a three-part brain. It's called the triune brain. And the three parts are metabolic, limbic, tucked in, the next outgrowth, the mammalian brain. The paleo-mammalian brain is also called. It's like it's what we share with all mammals, all creatures. And then also the neocortical brain, the new cortex, folded over. So this is a model that a neurologist will use to point out where an issue or a problem is. They'll show you this is how you're constructed. We also very interestingly have a gut intelligence, a very strong, that gut biome intelligence, a heart, and an innate intelligence. So I didn't design this. This is, we are a three-part system. We have these three very potentially integrated, synergistic centers of intelligence. We don't usually live like that, but it is possible, right? So that's what we're going to move to. So when you demonstrate this, when we hold this form and we add our Western civilization, the basic primary thing that our Western civilization is stressful, and it's caused us tremendous stress that causes us to contract. So now I haven't arranged for medevac helicopters to pick everybody up for broken thumb. So please do this, but don't break your thumb. Just so go ahead and put your thumb in the middle of your palm, and now fold your fingers over it. And now I'll go ahead and turn it and look at it, because that's very much like, lucid dreaming, like where you're finding, we're going to move into lucid living, where we actually find ourselves in this dream. Now contract it, but don't really hurt yourself, but go ahead and squeeze it to the point where you begin to notice that you're restricting your blood flow. That's stress. And that, of course, this position of us as contracted beings is disabled. It's disempowered. The opposite of this is not empowerment, but it certainly is agility and creative ability and resourcefulness and, access. This is a very limited field. In the reactive world, what this is good at is violence, and it's good at domination. And it's also good at the biggest fist that hits. The violence of it is the predator, dominator culture that has infected the human species. So this is a model of us in this modern age. Now relax your hand for a moment, but don't open it. Okay, that's normal. Now contract it again. Okay, that's too limited a range for our human experience. And of course, once in a while, and we all have this ability, you interact with a child or an infant or with a cat or with a paintbrush or with a musical instrument or whatever your art form is, and you open and you become creative and resourceful. But here's the shamanic practice, and here's the neurological practice that parallels this, that will open a reality to you that is amazing. This is practical applying shamanism. So when you notice that you are distressed, or that something distressing or frustrating, please look for something low, bombs dropping on children. That breaks any one of our hearts, right? I mean, you can't understand it. But pick something small, because what you want to do is one of the leading edge discoveries from Stanford in neurophysiology that normally studies pathology, but this is a new evolution studying wellness and how do we access our neuroplasticity, is that real shift happens from gentle, easy, slightly slowed down, and increased subtle awareness, that it is in fact the little gentle things that you notice that turn on the light, it's like a little tiny light switch in our lives, in our neurophysiology. And that's what accessing our neuroplasticity is: new horizons, new opportunities. So we're going to be, you notice something very small that irritates you, normally that you would write off. We all have these things in our life. So some small little irritating thing, or when something comes up and you hear a news story that distresses you, like, God, another shooting or something, demonstrate that the effect of this fearful message, stressful message from our culture is to contract you, because it does. We contract into a defensive posture. When you notice that, open to the present moment. So this language is not really important, but I'm going to go ahead and share it just so you know. In the face of distress, I open to the present moment. That's the start.
Very
Once you are open to the present moment, of course you could be resourceful and creative, but here's the art part. When you open to the present moment, instead of engaging in acting in the world, turn to your own heart for the guidance from source. This isn't just intuition. This is so deep. This is, our hearts are connected with the heart of creation. Our hearts are connected with life affirming, loving, and caring for life. In total, we essentially we love life. So you're connecting. The first thing you do when you open to the present moment, connect with source for guidance. And with your left hand, bring that to your other. Remember, we have metabolic, limbic, and neocortical. So we're connecting limbic with embodiment. Put your left hand on your lower belly. And what you've got when you do that, what you have is a double helix spiral of your own energy. So some language we could use is, in the face of distress, I open to the present moment with love and without fear. And the without fear that we're talking about is without the chronic contraction of fear.
well, Rico. Ever since the pandemic started, I've been talking about the need for all of us to use this time to slow down and look within ourselves. How has the pandemic affected you, and how has your practice helped you get through it?
Very interesting question, because again, very practically, and what I would like people to know is that what we call shamanism is not an arcane indigenous art only for indigenous people. It's like we're all indigenous to planet Earth. We're faced with global necessity for our emergence for each of us. So the call is for each of us to come present. So in the face of any emergency, you're being called to emerge. And what happens when we're threatened by things like COVID is that you can't fight it and you can't run from it. It's everywhere. It's all over. It's a pandemic, a global pandemic. And as a result, in our autonomic nervous system, which has the gas is the sympathetic nervous system, and the brakes is the rest cycle is the parasympathetic. Well, we end up hitting the gas, and because we can't fight and we can't run, we end up immobilized. Like this closed system I'm talking about ends up just vibrating and shaking. We get angry. We start inventing conspiracy theories. The further out, it all makes sense because this doesn't make any sense at all. So when you continue to move to, well, there is a response that I can come to. Instead of being frightened, first of all, I could be respectful. And instead of being angry and frightened at other people's opinions, which is a lot of, family distress about this. You should wear a mask. You shouldn't wear a mask. You got to get vaccinated. It's a big plot, on and on and on. All the different things that are the tangle of it that keep us contracted. Instead of that, you can move to a simple place of respect for other people's positions and find your way. What makes sense to you? What is the path that is love in action? What is the path that has benefit for yourself and for others? And from there, we move out of the lockdown of we can't run and we can't fight. So we contract and disassociate and become angry and be that lockdown spot, and the anger and the distress, like nobody can stop me from having hamburgers. No one's going to tell me what to do. No one's going to tell me I can't go to a bar and drink, and on and on and on. All that is completely eliminated, because what you can do is you can take care of yourself and others, and you can be respectful of the differences of opinion. The most important thing that happens is that when you restore this response instead of the reaction, your parasympathetic system, which is the regenerative, restorative rest place, is active, and you actually begin to feel better. This is the place where your immune system kicks in, which is a good idea. So this is the advice that when I work with people wound up, upset, uptight, usually people get depressed. You know, who wouldn't? If you're disempowered, there's nothing you can do. It's a big conspiracy, on and on and on. That position is as firmly locked inside of what we call the trance. And when you open to the present moment and you look for guidance from source and you do it without contracted fear, but with reasonable fear, suddenly a bunch of options show up that you never even thought. A bunch of creative ways of living your life, a way of sharing. I mean, Zoom itself and the way that we are, well, we're doing things like this now because you're on one coast and I'm on another, but people are meeting by Zoom, family are conferring by Zoom, the educational system has slipped into this mode. I mean, all kinds of solutions begin to emerge that didn't exist except for business meetings just a little bit before that. From a dream point of view, though, what happens is that you liberate yourself from disempowerment and you realize that you can be creative and agile. I don't know what surrounds every individual person, but I can tell you that you don't see it when you're contracted, and you begin to see it when you move to this more responsive realm. And we all have this instinct to care for life and to care for ourselves that gets better. We get better when we move to this open spot. So that's why I think applying shamanism rather than thinking of it as something that is done with sweat lodges only and, you know, power journeys, which are wonderful. This is very practical energetics. And that's what applying shamanism. I have another course called Practical Magic, which is so simple. This is the place that thinks that anything that happens in this realm is magical, and it's not. Our open, agile, creative, resourceful, responsive selves are naturally magical and miraculous.
How can people find out more about you and your services?
Probably the simplest is to go to my website, which is shaman.zone. Shamanzone.com was the kind of the old school way of doing it, shamanzone.com, but shaman.zone will take you there, and a link to contacting me, also a link to what's up, what I'm doing. A benefit series for the Dreaming House is going on currently, but also these programs applying shamanism, practical magic, access to my book, access to resources and tools. Yeah, check it out, because you will find that the shaman in you, that vibrational artist in you, is what my community supports.
We've been talking about shamanism with author and teacher Francis Rico. We'll be right back with our next guest. The mission of this show is to empower dreamers to live a life they love. Well, sometimes we can be living our dream life when something happens that's so devastating and so overwhelming to our being, it rocks us to our soul and causes us to question, will I ever find happiness in my life ever again? This is where my guest today, Bianca Torrence, found herself 4 years ago. Bianca, a successful real estate professional, suffered a heartbreak no one should have to endure. How she overcame her grief and used it to benefit others is the subject of her chapter in the new book, Amazing Woman, It's Your Time to Emerge. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Bianca.
Thank you, Debbie. So happy to be here.
Oh, I am very happy that you're joining us today. Well, Bianca, you did have to face an unimaginable tragedy, the death of your son. What was your reaction? How did you take steps to deal with that grief?
Well, this losing a child so unexpectedly for any parent is like the worst nightmare that any parent can have. And for me, it was no different. I was completely heartbroken. I was devastated. I didn't want to even, I wanted to end my life. You know, that's how painful it is. You find yourself in dark places, all alone and hopeless. But you know, it is hard to find strength. And I think for me, what helped me a lot was I had really good friends, really good support that gave me good advice. And I had a realization one day when one of my good friends, she's 92 years old now, and she said, Bianca, remember that life is like a moving cloud. It constantly shaping, taking different shape, constantly moving, and then it disappears. And at that moment, I realized that this is temporary. This pain that I'm experiencing is temporary. And everything in life is temporary. So we need to embrace it, whatever it is that we have. And I realized that I can still be grateful and happy during my chaos. And I meditated a lot. I read a lot of books. I did my daily mantras. I connected with the divine source for guidance. I grounded myself with Mother Nature, and I gained a lot of wisdom, and it gave me an opportunity to restore balance and harmony back again in my life. It's a daily practice, you know, they take a one day at a time, 1 minute at a time sometimes, because um, you know, the pain is unbearable. You know, there's, when you lose a husband, you're a widow. When you lose a parent, you're an orphan. There's no name for a parent that loses a child. And because the pain is so devastating, you know, it's out of order. Um, just thinking about it, you know, it just takes me back to that moment, you know, when I unexpectedly uh, found myself on that, in that place with this horrible situation. But I was able to turn it around by the grace of the divine power. And I'm taking one day at a time. I'm very happy right now, and I'm living a fulfilled life. And my advice to people is also, another big thing that helped me recover from imbalanced harmony was to uh, focus on gratitude. You know, I was crying and in pain for the loss of my son because he was such an amazing guy. He was only 31 years old when he passed, and he had a full life ahead of him. And I was so upset about a lot of things. And and then one day I realized, I was reading this book, and it had a sort of a manifestation. On the page of the book I was reading, I was at the beach, and I was there for a long time, and I was about to get home, and I thought I'll just finish reading this chapter. And it talked about the afterlife. It's a book about from Elizabeth Kubler, and she was talking that children often manifest after death more clearly than adults. And funny enough, I was reading the chapter, and all of a sudden this mosquito landed on a page that said, that on a sentence that said, wonderful years. And then I said, "Oh, okay." And then it jumped to the page on the right, and it said, Mom, I love you, or Mom, I'm grateful. And that message for me was so clear. And it made me realize at that moment that I needed to be grateful for all the years that I had him, rather than crying for him being gone. So that was a transformation for me. So it helped me with my pain, and I was happy. I was happy that I got to have him for 31 years. So
I know that was just at least one thing you could be grateful for in the time of grief was to focus on that. I tell you, this is a show about dreams, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the dreams that you had about your son. Tell me how this helped you.
well, one time I was right after he passed, because they were investigating the his death, and honestly, there were too many inconsistencies, and it was like about a couple of weeks after he passed, and I was sleeping in his room that night. I decided to go sleep in his room, and I woke up, and I don't know if it was a dream or if it was real. It felt real, but he said, "Mom, thank you for everything you're doing for me. I really appreciate it." And I heard it so clear. It possibly was a dream early in the morning, or his spirit just came so loud and clear that to this moment, I just, I remember it so clear. And he does come in my dream. Like they call it visitations, right? When people pass and they come and tell you, he 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 came on my dream one day. It was Mother's Day, the year after he passed, and he was just so loving, and we had such a wonderful relationship. He was like my best friend, and we were really good friends, and he was just such a wonderful guy. And he came in my dream, and he told me how much he appreciated me and he loved me, and said, "Mom, you're the best mom ever." And I have a lot of vivid dreams, and I forget a lot of time, but I write them down. And in fact, I'm gonna call you another time to go over some of the crazy dreams that I have, because I found out a few of the dreams. I already figured out what they mean, but there's some others that, why did I dream that? Some of them are very vivid and colorful, and they all have a meaning, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, the visions that you had of your son, you said you weren't sure if they were dreams or just something that you had, but I totally believe that it was, your son coming back to you and having to keep that connection with you, even though
Yeah.
he's on a different plane now, but he's still having that connection with you.
Yes, indeed he is. In fact, I every time I go running, because he was an Olympian, and he ran track and field, and he always encouraged me to run, because I always went for walks, but he says, "Mom, you should really run because that's better for you." And so I do go walk for walks, and then I run and walk and run. Whenever I go work out, I can feel his presence right with me. So this is such a nice feeling, and I feel like I can probably access that whenever I need him.
And you said that you've suffered other losses in your life.
Yeah.
Have you had visions from any of your other loved ones?
Well, okay. So when I was 31 years old, I became a widow with my two kids. My son was 6 years old, and my daughter was 3 years old. And that pain was horrific as well, because that was the first loss, significant loss that I had. And I was so young. Thank God I had family around to support me. I also lost my mom later on, which was also I thought it was so painful. That was a horrible experience. And then, but the loss of my son was the worst pain that I can recall. But going back to the loss of my husband, because I find that interesting, because the whole year, it seemed like the whole year that he passed, I dreamed about him every single night, to the point that I thought that I was living two lives, one at night and one during the day. And the dreams were so vivid. It's almost like he wanted me to join him. Like he was present with me every single night. And I realized I was sort of numb with the pain. I didn't realize what was really going on until a year later. I realized that he had actually passed. And I remember one of the last dreams that he came to pick me up, and he came to pick me up on a car. And then my cousin that had also passed away, they were together, and they were giving me this little box like a gift, but I never got to open it. And I never I woke up. I don't know where we went, or what the meaning of that dream was, but I can remember this was in 92. when my husband passed away. And I still remember some of the dreams so vividly, and that was one of them.
I am grateful that you were able to have these dreams and actually, in their own way, I think helped you get through this devastating time in your life.
Yeah, I think especially when Scott, my first husband, passed away, I felt that he was with me because I was having dreams every single night. Funny enough, right before he passed, he gave me this movie about it was a Brazilian movie about this woman that had lost her husband and then she remarried, but her husband was still coming in and having a life. So she was having a life with that husband that had passed and her new husband. And I thought that's funny that he gave me that movie he was so excited about that movie, and shortly after that he passed. And I did have a lot of dreams about him that year. And you're right, I think that helped me with the loss because I felt him that he was still there.
Bianca, one of the things that you said earlier was that you were helped in the beginning by being able to talk to your friend. I think you said she was 92 years old who helped you get through this. And I just want you to speak to the whole idea of the importance of having somebody to talk to share the grief with. Because I think a lot of people, when they find themselves having a loss, really don't know what to do. They feel, afraid to talk about it or feel that, nobody wants to talk about it with them. So speak to that, if you
Yes,
would.
I think that is true. When you have a loss, you for me at the beginning, I didn't even want to socialize. I didn't want to go anywhere because whenever I saw somebody started crying and they wanted to hug me, and I didn't want to go through that. I didn't want to have and repeat that sadness feeling over and over. So I secluded myself and I was just dealing on my own. Maybe I should have embraced the fact that people care and they love me. But when you're in such pain, you're in this tornado in the middle of it, and you don't know how to deal with life, with people, with anybody, with yourself, you know. And I started going to meditation quite a while. My friend Carol Moss, she did a guided meditation on Thursdays for a long time, and we became really good friends. In fact, we work together on a she's an amazing woman here in Malibu who helped. She founded the Malibu Card for the Homeless, and also helping others that are less fortunate makes you gives you some happiness because you realize that even though you still have pain, there are other people that are less fortunate, you know. And so helping the homeless and creating with working with Carol and going through the meditation group, it was a wonderful experience for me.
When I talk about dreams, I say that the way to really embody the message of the dream is to take an action on it. Well, you actually took action as a result of the tragedy of your son's death and did something to honor his memory. So tell us about what you did.
Well, so I was very frustrated with the investigation. Like I said, my son was an Olympian track and field runner star, and I believe that the way he died, there were a lot of inconsistencies with the investigation, and I kept asking why this and why that, why, and they immediately just assumed that he drowned in the pool, and it was a condominium pool, and my son was a big advocate for clean sports. In fact, USADA in the anti-doping world um, anti-doping agency, they asked him to be an ambassador for clean sports in South America. That was right before he died. I think he helped bust a coach that was doping the Olympians, and he was getting death threats. And I didn't know this till after he passed. His girlfriend told me, and then so I knew right away that there was something wrong with the investigation. And but I was so marginalized with the detectives. I felt marginalized because they probably thought, oh, this woman is calling, they're making a lot of noise, because I called all the higher ups, to get questions and results. And bottom line, they closed the investigation. And at that point, because I was trying to keep it open to find the truth, and I just had to let it go because it was killing me trying to prove something. And I even talked to the FBI, and the FBI said, you know what, if the police, they have to call us to if they need help. But this was the police in Arizona, and I just had to let it go. I believe in divine justice, and I decided, the truth is gonna come out. Maybe not in my lifetime, but the truth is gonna come out. It always does. So knowing that truth, I just had to let it go. And I decided to create this foundation, which is called the David Torrance Legacy Foundation, that my son wanted to help underprivileged athletes and help them train with integrity. Because when people take this dope, they dope, for better sport enhancements for better results, it's like cheating. It is actually cheating. And he was big on that. He trained with integrity. He was an advocate for the athletes for clean sports, and he wanted to help the kids in my country. I'm a native from Peru. And so I decided to create a foundation, and Professor Jeff Baker at Pepperdine University helped me create the organization. And right now we've got a lot of support. We got the organization going last April, actually, but because of the pandemic, we haven't really done much, but we're getting a lot of support. And doing the foundation, was inspired by my son, David.
How can people find out more about you and contact you if they want to learn more about you?
Well, there's on the book, they can go to the website, dtlf.org. That's my son's foundation, and they can put their contact there, or on my real estate website also, Bianca at realtor.com. And I'm writing a book on finishing the book, continuing my writing, because I feel like there's a lot to share, a lot of stories that are coming to my mind that are very inspiring.
Well, I can't wait to read it. So please send it to me when you're done.
Talking about dreams, I did have a dream. David and Jesse, who is my fiance's son that passed, they never met, okay? But I had a dream about them, like maybe 3 months after, or maybe a month after the TV fell, and they were both laughing. They were together and they were both laughing, and I knew that they were the ones that made the TV fall. It's crazy, but that's what John and I think. But we're happy because now we're back together.
We've been speaking with Bianca Torrence about overcoming grief. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. And if you're on Clubhouse, join me in my club, Club Dreams, where I host weekly rooms on all aspects of dream work. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.